Hey everybody, welcome to the Rhett Sever podcast. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. But anyway, so we are we are here today with my amazing comedian friend Elise Edwards, who we met on the New York open mic comedy scene. And she's an amazing actress as well. And we're gonna talk about the Last Temptation of Christ, the 1988 Martin Scorsese film that was based on a book by Nikos Kazantzakis. And it's just an amazing movie because basically, whenever the Catholic Church attacks something, that gives me a reason to then believe in what they're attacking. No, but if you're gonna go by a certain standard, you might as well be consistent. um, and so yeah, when I hear stuff like that, because like with my experience growing up, like as an oppressed little Mormon gay boy, you know, my and I'm so thankful now because when you're growing up, you think like it's the end of your life. Oh my God, I'm a pariah and everybody hates me. But then you realize you grow up and you pariah yourself away to New York City and you realize, oh my God, thank God that I'm a faggot because this is my salvation. Like this is what like made me amazing. Like I am so glad I was an outcast because I don't want to be a part of that society, that religious, conservative, oppressed society. So it's amazing that they ran me out of town because I didn't know then that, yeah, I agree with you. I should be running out of town. Like, so like we're complete in agreement, but you don't realize all this until later. So my point is that, that's probably what Scorsese was going through with The Last Temptation of Christ, because he wanted to be a priest, growing up, and he thought he was going to go into that. But then, I'm sure like with the whole 60s revolution, other things um, present themselves and evolve into better ways. And so what's interesting about this book and film is that they're reassessing who Christ, probably the real person was. So it's still considered a fictional account because they can't know because everything has been so muddied with time and the whole bias of Christianity. Of course, they made Christ into this whole other thing, obviously like a Messiah, Son of God figure. So of course that's gonna like manipulate tons of truths into lies, even though a lot of the Bible is still based in truth. It's like half lies, half truth, basically. It's like taking the true story of the world and then just manipulating it with lies so we can control people. And, that's basically like Christianity in a nutshell. Because, I mean, like, why are you destroying the Alexandria Library in Egypt? Roman Empire, like that's kind of fishy, but anyway. So the point is that we have to reassess history, and that's what this film is doing in a brilliant way in the book, because it's basically you know Scorsese says that it's a reassessment of the eternal struggle of mankind, like or the eternal spiritual struggle of mankind. And then explaining that through the real, what probably was the real philosophical struggle of Christ, the real person. And I don't know, maybe Elise also, and I was talking to my mom because she paid attention in church more than I did. So maybe Elise, based on, when I did acid that one time, you seem to be a person who paid attention in church more. So that's what made me want to watch the movie with you and have this discussion, because you just seem really smart and knowledgeable on a lot of the history and maybe have a really good perspective on it than just what I know. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
I also think that I know I do feel like my perspective is probably pretty nuanced based on, what some other, film, critics and, people that offer critique and stuff like that, both on in cinema and in terms of like biblical texts, because I was raised super Catholic. I'm also an astrologer and have been forever, and was also raised with as like a witch from a pretty young age, because my sister was already like, Catholicism, no thanks. She's 10 years older than I am.
Okay.
And so I was like learning like pagan rituals
Oh,
and
that's
like
cool.
Celtic magic and like what Wicca. And the thing that
Oh,
always
cool.
I always brought that back into my catechism class, and be always like questioning Catholic dogma, especially the things that I didn't understand or did not like fit neatly into like what I understood as to be valuable based in church, but also like knowing that, pagan religions, pagan spiritual practices. I mean, the word pagan even comes from a Latin word that just means rural or country. So, like, literally,
Right.
earth country religions that were based off the land. And so,
Wow, that's so
um,
interesting. Well,
really,
now you think about it, and it's like now our current Christian culture is based in the country or
well,
typically rural. Like that's so interesting. But anyway, go on.
Well, so a lot, and it's like been, especially over quarantine, listening to all kinds of podcasts and all this other stuff, and doing more astrology work, and um, just honestly, there's the Christian, like what I learned about the Catholic faith, is the purpose of Jesus, if you will, in terms of like human evolution, in terms of like the evolution of consciousness, is that while the Judeo like Christian, like that, I mean, Jesus was Jewish,
Yeah.
and he was saying that these things are good. There's all these like tenets of this religion that are both religious and cultural. And then he goes, and it goes a step further to be, we can't still be, going by Hammurabi's law or whatever, of an eye for an eye, because it leaves everyone blind.
Yeah.
So that is like, so I just love, I mean, I didn't even think about why Scorsese would be interested in doing this film, but also, he's a Italian American, and he probably understood that while this great and rich culture, which I'm part Sicilian, this great
Love me
and
too.
rich cult, yeah, this
Yeah.
great and like rich cultural tradition that he is from and very proud of, also has elements to it that are flawed or missing, that if you question them, you were either told you were crazy, and you were gaslit, or you were said, this is just the way it is. And
Yeah.
that's when like religion kind of gets a little like, well, like if by questioning this, am I going against a religion? Will I be eternally condemned to hell just for like asking questions? And instead, this is like kind of a really great way to be like, well, why don't we just look at Jesus as a human
Yeah.
and see, I mean, he was a dude, like,
Yeah.
and he was having a human experience while clearly
Yeah.
having a very close connection to the divine, which I personally believe is essentially what we could all do. Not everyone is as tapped in as Jesus. Not everyone
Yeah.
asked for Jesus' destiny before they came to earth, before they incarnated to earth, or for some people incarnated for the first time.
Yeah.
Um, so this was like I thought the last temptation of Christ was really interesting.
Yeah.
It was also in some ways like awesomely bad, and I didn't know how much of that was like from the book. I don't know how much of that was like just Willem Dafoe. I don't know how
Yeah.
much
You
of that
take
was the fact that it was
examples.
1988.
Yeah. Exactly. The 80s. Yeah. Yeah, could you have examples of like what you thought was kind of, you mean like what was kind of campy or something? Or what do you mean by
I
bad?
mean, let's just go from like the very first scene between him and is it Judas?
Yeah,
Is it Harvey Keitel
yeah,
that is
it's
him?
Judas. Yep.
I mean, it's so extra. It is just so extra from the jump.
Okay, maybe I'm an old man, but explain what extra means.
Oh my god, it's just so like
It's over
there's
the
just like
top, you mean?
I mean, yeah, it's over the
Yeah.
top, it's
Okay.
chewing the scenery. It's just like I mean, like I get it that you are
It's
going
funny
through
that you
like
say that. He's literally chewing the scenery, as in
he's
making a cross. He's a
yeah.
cross maker. Like, and I think
Well,
that was
so
a Nikos Kanazakis invention of that. Like, you know, he's kind of like, because right, it's about doing yourself in. It's you
yeah.
have your own plan, right? God had the plan. Jesus is part of God. God's whole plan is so like to me it was about he might as well be making the cross because if we're all one, if we're all if God is Jesus, then God put Jesus on the cross. So Jesus might as well be making the cross. So that I thought that was a genius invention of Nikos Kanazakis.
Well, so is that in the book? And
Yeah,
also,
it's in the book.
is that's actually what he's doing and getting paid to do in the
Yeah.
movie?
Instead of just
Like,
being a carpenter,
yeah,
he's a
instead of
carpenter
just
who
being a
makes the crosses.
woodworker, he's making crosses to hang people that
Yeah. And
were
so then Judas is like, you know, ironically, right, this person that betrays him in the Bible story version, Judas is saying like, how can you like betray your own cause? You're making the the weapons for the evil people that we're trying to go against. And so it's just as funny that like, oh, Judas is saying this, like, oh, okay.
mhm.
You know, it's just it's so interesting. Like, and I think it's just it's complicating everything because it's just illustrating how yeah, it's fucking complicated and not everything is wrapped up in the tight little bow that the Bible wants to
Yeah.
portray as because
Not everything is black and white.
yeah,
It's
that's
not easy. It's not a simple
not
this or
everything is
that.
good and evil. Yeah, like
Mhm.
every human is a mix of good and evil. And so you have
The
this
same
really
way, the same way that every human is a mix of earth, right? Of earth, of practical, physical, tangible elements, and then there's
yeah,
also an element of divinity that made life possible in the first place.
yeah. Yeah, so you have this balance of positive and negative in everybody and it's not just because with religious dogma, right, they need to paint that black and white story so that we don't question it in church, right? And so Elise, the little Wiccan Elise, doesn't come back to us with her evil ways and question our authority,
Oh,
right? Because it's about
I was questioning that shit all day. I mean,
right,
listen.
right,
It's
exactly.
like, listen, Sister Michelle. Okay, I can't with you. I don't care.
Oh my God.
She
Elise, you
was
would have
like,
been an amazing person to be a rebel with in Sunday school. I can't even.
oh my God, forget Sunday school. I received my catechism. I always say that I received like the bootleg version of like of like catechism. Like both my sister and my brother
Oh my
went to
God,
Catholic.
that's a really
They
funny bit. The Catholicism GED.
yeah, I always say I was like, listen, my catechism came out the back of a hatchback. Okay, it was sold out of the trunk of a car
Oh my
because
God,
it was
that's
teaching to the
hilarious.
test. It was teaching to the test, whereas my sister and my brother were like fully indoctrinated because they went to Catholic school for like a majority of their early education, and I never did. I was just a deviant secular public school kid that had to get my religious, education on Tuesday nights
Yeah,
from like
mine was
from six.
Wednesdays. Yeah.
Yeah, mine was 6 to 9. And I was just like,
I
listen,
think mine was
people,
too. Yeah, it was like an extraordinary amount of waste of time hours. It's crazy.
it's
But
it was
yeah,
also super interesting. And at the same
yeah,
time, yeah, there are scare tactics involved
yeah,
that, Christianity, I mean, not when the spread of Christianity, it went from basically a cult to a huge political unifier under Constantine. And guess what? Constantine was not, he was the first Catholic or Christian ruler, but he was or emperor. I don't know exactly what you would qualify him as, but the main, long story short, that man was a polytheist his entire life. He just unified everything under the name of this one Christian God because he was outnumbered, and he said, listen, if you help me win this battle, I'll make sure that all the lands that I reign over will be in your name. And he did. He won the battle against all odds. He was totally outnumbered. He was totally fucked. He won it anyway. And he unified the entire empire under the name of this one Christian God. He himself did not receive his Christian sacraments. He received his baptism and his anointing of the sick, his last rites, essentially, in the same go on his deathbed. So he himself, who made, like, so when I'm like, listen, there's nothing more Wiccan, there's nothing more pagan than like the Catholic traditions that are all like, I mean, we're using holly berries and holly, you know what I'm saying? Like all the Druids use holly berries and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's all about perspective. And the fact is, when people are born into like a certain religion, I feel like unless they have like a major reason to like leave it or question it, like for instance, you being like, listen, I'm like pretty removed from the rest of civilization. I'm like fully indoctrinated into like this one particular like part of like a Christian mindset, and I'm gay, which is telling me I'm against God if I am. So I'm pretty sure I'm still here and I still feel like I'm a good human being. Why? Like you're naturally primed to question the system of knowledge and the system of beliefs in which that you are born into. But a lot of people aren't. A lot of people are normcore, and they're so happy to just take it and not question it.
Because that's the thing, that the big lies of society that you're sold, like organized religion, sexism, racism, homophobia, like when everybody's going with it, then you can't question it because it's like, oh, it seems like it's right since everybody agrees.
Right. It seems like it's right.
Right, because those big lies by society are so powerful for people. You don't want to go against the grain of what most people are saying. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, some people,
years after I moved here, finally. It took me years after I moved here to finally come out. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's deep-seated shit. Like, I knew to leave, but I didn't leave the mindset right away. That took longer. That's crazy. But anyway.
And it's still you're always evolving. You still like peel back different levels.
Indoctrined.
Yeah, I mean, it's the very same thing with me and with all of us. Like, we don't realize how indoctrinated into looking for external forms of authority, external forms of knowledge, external whatever. We are not taught to look inward, which is like what Eastern and more holistic, like things that like balance the mundane and the mystical, or like the esoteric, whatever, like fields of knowledge or fields of experience. Like Christianity, as given to me, was like, I felt like the most accounting for the both and is like literally just that Bible story about Jesus being like, pay unto Caesar that which is due to Caesar, pay unto God that which is due to God. Meaning, like, you're going to be taxed on both sides, but at least you're accounting for both sides of your existence, both what it costs to take to support your physical existence, and that which you need to invest to support your divine or spiritual existence and or inheritance. So other than that, I mean, it wasn't until I just like studied all the things and just like
Yeah.
kept an open mind, and I brought it right back into that catechism class. And they were like, "Shut up!" And I was like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm the only person in this class who can tell you what Pentecost is. Okay, so get fucked." You know, like
Yeah.
it was like it was. You can either have my full attention, and out of someone who's also going to question what it is that you're telling me, or I could be like all these other ass bags that are like picking their nose and like,
Yeah. Just going along with it. Yeah. So,
yeah.
oh, did you hear something?
Sorry. Yeah, I heard something crazy and I have no idea what it is. It was kind of scary.
Well, anyway, two things that made me realize what, like, everything you said was that, like, how we're so indoctrinated, you have to unlearn so a perfect example is when you were asking me if we're going to do the podcast and the visual, you're like, do I have to put on a face? And I'm like,
Oh my
then
God.
did you listen to my voicemail? My
No.
voicemail, no, I left you a voicemail just as a joke. I was basically saying that, like, well, no, Elise, I shouldn't be able to have to tell you to put on a face. If me as a man, I don't even have to put on a face because society doesn't expect that of me. So who am I
I
to tell
know.
you to put on makeup when I don't even have to put on makeup? So I think that's very sexist, and that's I don't want to go along with the patriarchy. So you do what you want. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, that's an example of how, like what? I'm not gonna tell a woman to put on makeup. That sounded so wrong to me
I
that, like,
know.
I had to because you didn't answer the phone, so I left you a voicemail saying, like, no, you don't have to put on makeup for me. I'm not, like, misogynistic.
Listen, hun, I did not even listen to the voicemail. And then when you texted me and were like, oh my God, my voice messages, I
Oh,
thought you were referring back to the ones that you left me when you were still spun on acid. Like I left you in good faith that
oh
you were
my
like safe.
God,
And
I
instead
forgot
you
about
had to like,
those.
you had to like leave me. You left me like a minute and a half of like just you just like pontificating like on the universe. with your with the doors of perception cleansed, and I was
Oh
like,
my
yeah,
God,
man.
is that amazing? Like, do you still have that? That would be so fun
Yeah,
to listen
I
to,
do.
because I forget those things when I'm sober. Like, I forget
I'll
what
send it to
kind of
you.
happened. Oh my God, that's crazy. Yeah. So, and another thing was, they always talk about, like, oh, like, Jesus, like, the death of Jesus was the Jews' fault or the Romans' fault or whatever. But then it's like, wait a minute, what did the Romans? If the Romans weren't Jewish, what were they? They were
Hmm.
believing in Zeus, right?
Well, at that point, Zeus would have been Jupiter, I believe, because Zeus is like
But it's
the
still based
Zeus is the Greek one, but
in those
it's the
Greek and
same.
Roman gods, right?
Yeah, they were still for the most part polytheistic, and
Right.
I mean, like Judaism started as a cult too, and then
Yeah.
it had,
It's just the oldest one that's still
but
practiced in Western.
it's just been like around for like way longer, and
Yeah.
and Jesus was completely out of that cultural and
Monotheistic.
religious, yeah, tradition. And and it's not that he didn't say that it was wrong, which I think is like what they also do. It was almost like he was trying to make his own traditions. Like that's what I kind of feel like the movie did do well, was that he was still he seemed very far out because he was almost communicating a continuation, like almost like all of the oral tradition, right, which is what Judea, the Jewish tradition is from. um he was it's all, you can imagine that they all ended with like an ellipses, you know what I'm saying, like the to be continued, or there's more there,
Yeah.
but like as it gets committed to a written word, it becomes just that. An ellipses turns into a period, like a definite punctuation.
Yeah.
And Jesus just picks up like, yo, I'm here, I'm making these crosses, I'm feeling bad about it. I'm struggling. I'm out here struggling, bro.
No, and do you know what? I was just gonna go into my theory as to why Jesus was such a good questioner of his existence and everything was, I think he just had like a good amount of natural like DMT, or he was doing some DMT or something, right? Like the whole burning bush they think was like, actually just like the DMT on fire, and they're getting high just in proximity to the whatever or whatever. But um and so I think he just had that certain mindset to like, you know, inspire everybody to rebel. And so then it gets into that whole thing with the Christian lie of the thieves um that he was crucified with, right? So my mom, and I was talking to my mom about this too, and it was so funny. She happened to be reading this book called the Jesus Papers, right? And so then she also, they were confirming things like, the Romans didn't crucify thieves. Like that doesn't make any
Mm-hmm.
sense. It's because they had to lie and just say um, they were thieves, right? But
Mm-hmm.
they weren't. They were co-conspirating rebels along with Jesus. But
Mm.
if they tell that story, then it makes Jesus seem more like a human, right? The more of a human rebel starting a cult or whatever, which he
As
didn't
opposed to
justify.
someone who,
Yeah.
as opposed to someone who just put out with the rest of the trash, the rest of society's.
Yeah, like dying for our sins and everything. That's obviously the story, of, a divine religion trying to do their, telling the story of how existence is explained, right? So that makes sense that they would tell those lies, but there's like concrete like evidence that shows like no, like it doesn't make sense that they would crucify thieves. That, do you know what I mean? Like that just inherently is false. Like it doesn't make any sense. Even if you're like a Christian person and you might even think like, oh yeah, like you throw a thief in jail or something. You don't crucify a thief. And then you were telling me something about that in terms of at when we were on acid at the end of our acid trip, you were saying something about like Barnabas was the guy's name or something with
Oh yeah.
um
So yeah,
Pontius
Barnabas.
Pilate and,
So
and Barnabas, right?
yeah,
What
so
was
this
that
is
about?
something, and like, I mean, we had the Apostles' Creed. We would say the Apostles' Creed, or there's another variation of the Apostles' Creed that is like said often in Mass. And I always wanted to know why Pontius Pilate was so important.
Yeah.
And he seemed like a bad guy. Like I was always raised to think that he was a bad guy. He fucking like he crucified Jesus. He was
Yeah.
crucified under Pontius Pilate. He suffered, died, and was buried. On the third day
But
he
his
rose again.
argument would probably be more along like the Nuremberg. No, I was just doing my duty, like the Nuremberg.
Well,
But anyway,
what was like funny is that like there was multiple accounts, and also some of them are captured in film,
yeah.
which what's really great, and I know this is gonna be, this is a quote that I did get from Jordan Peterson, and I don't know,
Oh,
I'm sure
okay.
a bunch of your listeners are like, fuck Jordan Peterson, but it was like I got it from, he was doing just recently an interview with Matthew McConaughey, and he tells Matthew McConaughey, he goes, in your book, you tell a lot of stories, to get certain points across, and he said that, well, storytelling is a really effective way of imparting or transmitting information or lessons, knowledge to people without, I can't remember if he used the word uh, dogmatizing or propagandizing.
Right, right.
But that is like what the storytelling is. And if you think of all these religions, both the Judeo-Christian tradition being an oral, like a storytelling, whatever,
Right.
it makes a lot of sense. You want to tell stories to impart, this is what is good, this is part of the human experience, and this is like what is good, what is bad.
Instead of
So in any case,
abstract philosophies, right? They're connecting
it's
more to a story. But anyway,
yeah, and they're humanizing it, and
yeah,
it lets the listener take away what it is that they need from this story.
yeah,
The whole
like a
point is just
lesson, right?
yeah, and without propagandizing it, which or
Making it
dogmatizing it, being
seem
like
like
this is
they're
the
being
only
brainwashed,
way.
right?
Yeah. That
Yeah.
this, I'm saying this with authority, which is meant to trump your internal authority.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I always thought that Pontius Pilate was, this bad dude. And then like later on, I saw, watch films, both of some more historically accurate than others,
Yeah.
which really showed Pontius Pilate just being exactly what he was, which was like a government worker for the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
And he had heard of Jesus, and he had heard of the and he knew of like the political, both of the Roman people and of the Jewish people, like the Pharisee, that were concerned of the momentum that Jesus's teaching was getting. And he himself interacting with him, Jesus didn't spit in his face. Jesus didn't say, fuck you, asshole. Like, he was so human and stuck to his word in a way that while Pontius Pilate was like, okay, this seems weird, or like not something like normal people would say, he did not feel personally threatened by it. So he again left it up to the crowd to say, okay, you guys have a choice. We can hang this guy Barnabas, who like stole a loaf of bread. I don't know what Barnabas stole, but you can steal this guy. This guy can be put to death for civil injustices that are clearly delineated in. He gave him a popular vote. He gave the populace a popular vote of whether or not Jesus was to be crucified, or this, common thief was supposed to be crucified. And they chose Jesus.
Yeah.
They were like, Jesus, like, which is weird. And he was, and Pontius Pilate was like, that was like his last hurrah. He was like, I gave it to the tax paying people's choice. Right. And they said to kill the person who may or may not be the Son of God. We don't know.
Dictator choosing what to do. It wasn't my fault. Everybody wanted this, right? It's almost like that complicity thing, making people complicit so that you don't look like the bad guy. That's like Jeffrey Epstein and all the evil people, right?
Accountability.
They make everybody complicit so they can't look completely like the 100% evil person. Yeah.
And so what's weird is that like what I received in my religious education was that Pontius Pilate was a bad dude. And then what I feel like I've read and absorbed from other accounts was that he was just a dude. and that he actually, in a lot of ways, was very affected by the human element of Jesus. I mean, like, I guess like taking it to the nth degree would have been to like step down and just say, I'm not going to do it. Instead, he did everything that he could in terms of being a fair and balanced whatever of justice, like executor of justice, to be like, I'm still feeling like there's a human element that's not being accounted for by the law. Let me give it one last try and ask the people who I'm supposed to be carrying out the law, enforcing the law in honor of, or, in support of, see what they have to say about it. And they still were like, kill the Son of God. So if you strip it all that away from it, aside from the fact that, in a way that I kind of love how my later perception of Pontius Pilate, which I don't feel like it was neither supported or denied by Pontius Pilate's, portrayal in the Last Temptation of Christ. But just that later on, my later perception of him was that like he was just a dude like in the system, and he did what he felt he was like in his capacity to do, in his power to do, within the whatever of the system, within the confines of the law. And we as humans, or people that were so indoctrinated or so invested in the law of the land, were still like, no, kill what may very well be the Son of God, or not. who knows?
Yeah,
You
which is
know,
why you have that like Nuremberg trial argument of like, oh well, it was right, this whole system's fault, not just mine. Yeah.
right. Which it is, and it was
Yeah.
then, and it is now, and it's
I
the
know
same
that's what's so
shit.
crazy. It's a good argument. Like
At the
that's
end, that's why we have to have these conversations so we can end what is a toxic
yeah.
patriarchal like obsession with
Yeah,
like
because then
reason.
when you are making your dogma black and white for your followers, then they're going to see the world in black and white, which is going to create things that are possible, like the insurrection that was last month, right? Because they see the world in black and white, they see it in good and evil. So when you have that limited perception of reality, then yeah, of course you're going to go to the Capitol and fucking break in and think it's okay, and then be surprised when you're arrested. Do you know what I mean? Like, because your whole reality has been so fucked with that.
And people are still like, and people are operating under like there's either control or there's chaos, and
Yeah,
not like taking, there's so like the individual accountability
yeah,
matched by a sense of community with other people that that are also individuals that are hopefully holding their own selves accountable for their actions or
yeah,
interactions. And then each person has the ability to like hold each other accountable. But the main thing that's missing from our system, the system back then, the system for as long as all of this shit's been going on,
yeah,
is accountability. And
yeah,
in fact, we raise it to a level of divinity. Like, you're
yeah,
not held accountable for your actions. You're going to be judged by this fucking end all be all when you die. It's like, yeah, but
yeah,
what about when you're here on Earth? Like, you got to fucking be the fuck. What if you are also the alpha and the omega of your own existence?
yeah,
Wouldn't every action or inaction that demonstrated, that would take on a greater significance, so that you would be forced to make those like godlike decisions for yourself
yeah.
on your own behalf, because you have to live with yourself for the rest of your time you're here on Earth.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes me realize something I said when we were high. One of the things was I realized when you were talking about the right, like people believing in heaven and hell and the judgment and everything, what they don't realize is that, yeah, that may be the way things are, but they don't realize it's in this life, not in the afterlife,
Yeah.
right? Like the judgment, the hell and heaven on earth is in this life. It's not in the afterlife. That's
Mm-hmm.
the confusion. So it's like they're on the right track. They're just misplacing where the heaven and hell is. We're living
and
in heaven and hell right now.
and what allows us to dogmatize, right, or
Yeah,
propagandize the
yeah,
beliefs, are that we have these religions
yeah.
that are really institutions
And they're
that are
evolving over time.
controlling. They're
Yeah,
controlling. So like something that I developed very early on, I mean, like when I was like 10 or 11, I developed this saying that is, spirituality transcends religion. And
yeah.
so that's like what I kept, that's what I stuck to. That is part of
And
my
a lot of
personal,
people say that nowadays. I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. A lot of
yeah.
people say that. Yeah,
And also I feel like I and that's great, because
yeah,
spirituality does transcend religion,
yeah.
and also
Because if your
religion
religion's
is
fucking up, you got to transcend it. But anyway,
right.
one.
And that's not saying that all religion is bad by
Yeah,
any means. In
yeah,
fact, it ritualizes the accounting for the spiritual aspect of life all the
yeah,
time, which a purely secular lifestyle or mindset does not.
yeah,
And I don't believe in that either. Like, the first way to get me very uninterested or uninvested in
yeah.
things is for like when people that are purely living for the physical, like
Yeah.
3D world. And I'm just like, all right, well, that sucks. Call me when you call me when you get a
Probably when you
clue,
grow
you
up.
know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I like, yeah, I mean, but like, I also, to me, I just just to get back to Scorsese, but
Yeah.
also just to get back to like storytelling in general, is that I love, like, ever since I got that verbiage of storytelling is putting lessons into or perspective into story, as opposed is a great way to impart information or knowledge without propagandizing or dogmatizing it. I
Yeah.
was like, dude, that's why when my mom was like calling me with all kinds of like crazy shit that was happening during like the end of President Trump's presidency and
Oh,
into the inauguration of Joe Biden, my mom was just like talking about all this stuff, and every time I would refer back to something that was like institutional. This is a problem with the institution of X, Y, and Z. This is a problem with whatever. I believe that stems from patriarchal views and like the tendency to suppress or oppress certain bits of information or beliefs that are not don't raise someone's bottom line in
yeah.
terms of like money and stuff like that. And listen, I'm an astrologer. Like astrology was like astrology and astronomy were studied as one in the same until all the way up until Newton's laws of physics, really, which
Yeah.
is like pretty recent time.
Yeah.
And instead of looking at the other side of the coin, the one that's a more esoteric and not, like purely math based, the astronomy is the quantitative study of our galaxy,
Yeah.
or our solar system, and astrology is the qualitative study of our solar system.
Oh,
So
okay.
it was the separation of those things, and then it was really our patriarchal society that just kept running with the one that we could see or that could qualify. Basically,
Right.
I say that we've just let everything become a literal and figurative dick measuring contest, because a dick and
Right.
its size is something that you can quantify. But
Right.
anything
With
that is
certainty.
quality, it's about the qualities of life, or the qualities of existence. Things that are more subjective and not objective were dismantled or demonized or like put aside. And so that is what brought the necessity for storytelling and
Yeah.
really exploratory like storytelling
Because
to
they
the
forgot to
forefront.
measure the person's skill in using that dick. They were just measuring.
Exactly. Those are all quantifiable,
Yeah.
qualitative, not
Yeah.
quantitative.
Right.
And so that is in and of itself.
Right.
But everything became a dick measuring contest, because they're like,
Yeah.
okay, these are things that we can control, and they're
Yeah.
things that we can measure, and they're things that we can like use the
Yeah.
data to like tell everyone that this is the truth, the undeniable truth.
Yeah.
And then everyone else, it's like, okay, yes, that is the truth. And also I feel like there's another part that I feel like is unaccounted for. I just can't like
Yeah.
quite put my finger on it.
And
And they're
that's
like,
when
shut up, you.
Yeah.
Shut up, you just shut the fuck up, and no, just do this.
Yeah.
That is what we talk about when we're talking about patriarchy, or like,
Yeah.
whatever, toxic masculinity. It's not that it's not masculinity is not bad.
Right.
It's just that feminine is the receptive and the more like allowing for, and whereas
Yeah.
like the other one is more, it's assertive. It's only based off of like things that you can like see, smell, touch,
Yeah.
whatever. And it's for the purpose of like imposing one's will, as opposed to like receiving information that is like coming from within. And like, I don't know, it's a lot. It's a
Makes sense.
balance. It's a
No.
balance. And once you make things out of balance, that's when it becomes unlivable. That's when everyone,
Yeah.
even those who quote unquote thrive in that system, they're still living like below what they could live, which is what I feel like Willem Dafoe as Jesus did a really good job of like doing, because he
Uh-huh.
was so extra. He was like so extra sensitive about everything
Right.
in
I'm
this thing, which
sure
kind of
that
made
was
him a
a
nightmare.
direction he was supposed to be acting
I
in.
certainly hope so. I mean, I hope Marty was just like,
Well, given
listen,
Marty's track record, I'm sure it wasn't an accident, you know.
It was not.
But I mean, who
How
knows?
long
They were
ago?
suffering
How
the excess
long?
of the 80s. They could have been spoiled and just doing a job they didn't want to do. Who knows? But anyway, go on.
So, okay, how long was it like? So this was like 80,
In
this was
1988,
88. When did Age of Innocence come out?
93. That was
Okay.
93. Yeah. That's also in Criterion Collection. Yeah. So,
Let's watch that one.
yeah, we should
I
do
love
that.
Daniel Day.
Also, oh, that's an interesting thing because that has a lot to do with, right, the expectations of society and going against. It's kind of the same thing almost. Just going against what you're told and going with your gut instinct because everything you said made me realize basically the history of our world in a nutshell, right? So basically what they're doing is people, when they rise to power, they want to be able to control people. They're only able to control people if the people believe their history. In order to believe a history, you have to then give it faith in terms of people's certainty of that history, right? You're talking about the quantitative versus the qualitative. Um, the what would it be? The quantitative is more certain, so that's why they're going to that, to using it. Where the qualitative is more gut instinct, cosmic and less certain. And we don't know what that's all about because we're not supposed to know what. That's what I personally believe. I don't think we're supposed to know all that because that's the catalyst for this whole human evolution we're going through, right? In the first place, it's a mystery for a reason. And so and then that creates the catalyst for our evolution as humans in terms of you're controlling somebody by making them believe something, and you don't want them to question it, because if they question it, then you don't have them in control anymore, right? And it's all chaos, right? And so um but then you have this evolution over time where people are inevitably going to question things. You can't keep people under control. They're going to get agitated and annoyed to the point, especially if you're fucking homophobic towards them, right? You're inherently giving them a reason not to believe in your bullshit because you just outcasted them for some other stupid reason. So of course they're gonna rebel against your bullshit. You just fucking dehumanize them for some bullshit that doesn't mean anything. Which is where you get like the whole right, to them it's quantitatively making sense to hate people of color, women, and gay people, right? You have all the isms because um to them that makes sense. It comes down to people being born with the predisposition to, I need to believe something. I need to know the fucking answers. I cannot um live in an existence where I don't know the answers, and this uncertainty, because uncertainty is what is scaring them and making them fearful. They're I don't know, their brains aren't fully developed or something. We're lucky. Our brains are
Well,
fully
there's
developed and we're questioning things. I don't know. But
well, there's also, I mean, also, like, I was, again, a person that I completely came across because of the Joe Rogan podcast, which,
right.
again, it's
Yeah.
not lost on me that this guy, his name is Brian Muraroscu. He wrote a book called The Immortality Key, and he goes back to find evidence of what was really going down in these like spiritual acts, spiritual rites, spiritual practices of the antiquity that are pre-Judeo-Christian, or at least pre-Christian, and him finding a lot of evidence that, yeah, they were like tripping during it, and that probably the communion of, like, of Christianity also was either involved wine that also had some kind of like ergot, like, which is what is some similar compound, or the compound that's found in psilocybin, which is like mushrooms. And then
Yeah.
what they were trying to like recreate when they made acid, they just made it like 1,000 times more powerful. It was like 1,000 times more concentrated because it was synthetic. In any case, these illusions, the mysteries of Eleusis, the practices of all of these, they're feminine, feminine, not as in, well, there were female technicians as opposed to being male priests, but the main thing was that yes, you already know what master you serve during the day. You already know what your perception and what your place in the world and what answers the world during the day has to offer you. Then we have this whole period at night where the stars are visible to you.
Yeah.
We really get our idea of time, or even the passage of time, from the changing phases of the moon. And
Yeah.
they would hold these like spiritual rites where kind of the idea is that like your brain and your spirit, whatever, both, and they didn't separate the two,
Yeah.
have imagination and answers that live inside, that when you have the blank canvas of darkness and your creativity, your imagination is more at play, you have more access to, or what do you call that, project onto the world from what you've already experienced, whatever is like deep inside of you. You project onto the world like new dimension, new
Yeah.
phenomenon, of whether they be
Yeah.
mystical or like whatever. And
Yeah.
that slowly got phased out because they
Yeah.
could not control what
Right.
people were what people were experiencing during those times.
Yeah.
People were they positioned it as people are going to excess, people are doing things like in extremes. So when they eliminated that part of because it didn't fit neatly into a controllable law that was, all like adhered to or whatever, they did away with it. And we see that now. I mean, basically, when they say that, history is whatever written by the victors or
Yep.
whatever,
Yep.
it's because the suppression of information, and of individual perspective, and especially of competing, point of views,
Yeah.
is essentially dangerous to the foundation on which you are building your power structure.
Yeah.
And what we're coming back into now, like, as this is, I end up talking about this a lot. Every time people are always going to ask me about Age of Aquarius and are we in Age of
Yeah.
Aquarius and blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. Yeah,
Yeah.
bro, we're going into the Age of Aquarius. We're in it. Like, we're in still transitioning into it, but like, we're at
Yeah.
the most Age of Aquarius that we have been ever
Yeah.
during the existence of humanity. So,
We're very lucky to be
and
living this time. Yeah.
well, we're lucky. And also, I mean, I come from a karmic astrology background. We chose to come here. We
Right.
chose to come here at this time to help usher it in and help make sense of, and ultimately process and release a bunch of stuff that we acquired and accumulated in terms of like damage and trauma over past lifetimes.
Yeah. It's in our DNA, the trauma.
Yeah.
Yep.
The trauma's in our DNA of having a huge aspects of our human and psychic experience uh stuffed back down our throat, or
Yeah.
penalized, or literally crucified like Jesus, like
Yeah.
because of our inherent knowing that we are more than just here to
Be a slave.
eat, shit, fuck, die, like,
Yeah.
yeah, and like
Right.
pay taxes to something that only like that 20% of what our money is doing goes to infrastructure and the actual support of our human condition, and the rest of it is used to control the human condition and the human
Yeah.
consciousness. And that's like, it's unlivable. It
Yeah.
literally makes conditions unlivable.
Yeah. And that's what we're in, is a lot of unlivable times. It's like the US is not supposed to look like a third world country in a lot of places, but it does. And our leader, our last leader, even acted like a third world leader. Like, it's crazy. Like, that's not supposed to be the case. Like,
I
it's
would love to do
crazy.
like a whole thing on like the whatever of Donald Trump,
Right. Oh
because
my God. It's
there's so
amazing.
much of
It's a
it.
whole
Like,
nother
I don't even
podcast.
care.
Yeah.
I don't even care like what part of history he ends up on. I know for a fact that his level of like megalomania and also what I don't know what else is, but it literally, there's no way to deny that the system is not one that is 100% but like elected by the people. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
And even like we had a better, like they had the first democracy that we based our representative democracy on was a much more direct democracy. You literally just had like citizens. Okay, women were not involved in these, by the way, but
Yeah.
you just had citizens in ancient Greece. They would just like say, these are the things that we're voting on. Like, put your hand in the air, yay, put your hand in the air, nay. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it was immediate. It was immediate, and it was each individual. Again, the why they didn't include women in this process is totally fucking beyond me, but I get it. Whatever.
Yeah.
I'm saying that we're evolving past it, and for those of us that are not ready to evolve past it, you can go back into the ground and check, like, catch us next millennium. Okay.
Yeah.
Like when,
And things are very you know, right, like what we were saying before, nuanced. That's what's missing from all this is nuances. That's our next evolution, is we have to have more nuance, because you know that's why you have the bubbles on each side, is that they cancel out the nuance. And so and then also, you know, well, for example, like I've been very, just watching this podcast, like what's recording, right? Like I'm looking at myself and I realize, like, dude, I look like I was at the insurrection. Do you know what I mean? Like, but like, of course, you know, I completely know the trauma in our society of what's going on, and I can hopefully, what I think is, explain it to myself. And so, you know, not everybody who looks like that is an evil person. And of course, there are people who look like they are part of what are supposed to be on our side. You know, like let's say somebody like Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro. They seem like they should be on our side, but they're part of the enemy or whatever. I don't know, but
well, the whole point is that there's no sides. Like, okay,
right,
Age of
yeah,
Aquarius,
it's all random. Like,
you're
yeah,
totally right about like nuance being like something that is missing and something that we're like ushering back in. The
yeah,
age, like Aquarius is the most humanitarian sign. It's also the most individualistic sign. It is not, it's a
okay,
pretty like it is pretty emotionally detached, and yet the most concerned for of and with
oh,
humanity.
that's an interesting,
So
like,
it teaches
duality.
humanity to be better
Yeah,
by listening to the inner voice and
yeah.
expressing the inner voice without the need of pomp and circumstance, without the need of fanfare. And
And
it's because
ego
Aquarius,
and follow me, right?
so the flip side of Aquarius is Leo, which I'm sorry to turn this into like your astrology podcast.
Okay.
By the way, check out Anam Kara
No,
Astrology. That's my
everything's
astrology outfit.
connected. Everything is connected.
Yeah,
It's all
it
good.
is.